Well, it's 7 o'clock. Is everyone ready? Okay.
Ready.
Calling to order the business meeting for Diamond Lake School District 76. Roll call, please.
Armenta, Hale,
Here.
Houtman,
Here.
Candela,
He's muted.
okay, Kwan, here, Lozada,
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag,
The flag.
United States of
to the
America,
United States of America, to the republic which stands
And
nation,
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Justice for all.
What happened to the flag?
Oh, it's showing a different screen.
Oh.
There are two different ones on there. I promise I had it.
Next time
I'll
we'll have
add
to
it.
have a little mini flag to wave
Oh,
in case
I
of technical difficulties.
No, it was here.
No.
It was here. I
Okay.
promise it was there. There it is.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
I apologize. It was actually there. I just had two screens. I'll edit that in.
Should have one of your
Thanks.
girls, like Carson Daly puts up, the signs, like his kids put up the signs, like when he's doing his report on the Today Show. You should have one of the girls just hold up the flag when it's time to do that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
That's funny. Okay, moving on to public comments on agenda items. Do we have any public comments this evening? Eric, do you see any?
We have 3 attendees. If you have public comments, all you need to do is do the question or answer or raise your hand.
Eric, do we have any attendees right now?
We do. We have 3 of our teachers. Okay.
Okay. We're gonna assume that there are no public comments. If for some reason you were trying to make a public comment and it didn't work, please try again. And there's another section for comments later on the agenda. Moving on to our business agenda. The first item on the business agenda is the Omnibus vote agenda. Items under the Omnibus vote agenda are considered routine and or non-controversial and will be approved by one motion. If any one board member, staff, administrator, or citizen wishes to have a separate vote on any item or items, that item or items will be pulled from the Omnibus vote agenda and voted on separately. Be it resolved, the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education accepts and approves the Omnibus vote agenda, items A through E as listed below. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Lozada,
Yes.
Candela,
Yes.
Armenta, Hale,
Yes.
Houtman,
Yes.
Kwan, yes, Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to our second item on the business agenda, which is the emergency suspension of policy due to COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas section 10-16.7 of the school code requires that school boards to direct through policy the superintendent in his or her charge of the administration of the district. Whereas the school board has adopted policy 2:240, board policy development, which authorizes the board to adopt, revise, and temporarily suspend board policies. Whereas on March 9th, 2020, Illinois Governor Pritzker declared all counties in Illinois as disaster areas pursuant to Section 7 of the Illinois Emergency Management Act and directed implementation of the state's emergency operations plan in response to the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. Whereas on March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization characterized COVID-19 as a pandemic. Whereas on March 13th, 2020, the U.S. President declared a national state of emergency and Governor Pritzker ordered the closure of all public and private K-12 schools in Illinois until March 30th, 2020 in an effort to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Whereas on March 20th, 2020, Governor Pritzker extended the closure of all public and private K-12 schools in Illinois until April 7th, 2020. Maybe we want to amend that since they're not closed through the end of the year, although I guess it doesn't matter. Whereas the Illinois State Board of Education, which has the authority to administer attendance and school calendar requirements, to interpret graduation requirements, and to oversee the allocation of resources for nutrition, transportation, and other crucial aspects of public education, is providing written guidance to Illinois school boards and their districts on issues related to COVID-19, including but not limited to student attendance, e-learning, meal distribution, transportation, special education, and other issues. Therefore, be it resolved by the Diamond Lake School District 76 Board of Education of Lake County, Illinois as follows. Section 1, the board suspends subheads and/or other provisions of its board policies and/or whole policies as identified previously by the board, or if not previously identified by the board, as identified together by the board president and superintendent, if such suspension is necessary to implement executive orders of the governor and/or written guidance from ISBE related to COVID-19, including any subsequent orders by the governor to close schools, if any. Section 2, the superintendent will consult with the board president and as soon as practicable, but in any event prior to the emergency closure and efforts to implement written guidance from local, state, and federal health and government agencies, report to the board regarding such emergency closure and efforts to implement written guidance. Section 3, the superintendent is authorized after consultation with the board president and notification to the board to close any school building or district facility without further action by the board. Such closure shall continue during the emergency created by the COVID-19 pandemic until such time as the superintendent, in consultation with appropriate local, state, and federal health and government authorities, deems it in the best interest of the district and its student open schools. Superintendent is authorized after notifying the board president based upon the needs of the district and the guidance from local, state, and federal health and government agencies to direct staff assignments during district closures, including but not limited to essential employees who must physically report to work and employees whose services are not needed. Section 5, access to the district school grounds and school buildings or facilities may be limited as directed by the superintendent during district closures related to COVID-19. Section 6, in the interest of public health and in accordance with the governor's executive order 2020-7 and subsequent guidance issued by the Illinois Attorney General, the board may conduct open public meetings remotely via telephonic or electronic means, providing opportunity for public access and comment in accordance with the COVID-19 guidance of the Attorney General. The board reserves the right to adjust board meeting dates, times, and locations during the district-wide emergency closures in a manner consistent with the Open Meeting Act and issued COVID-19 guidance from the Illinois Attorney General, and notes that any and all board members may attend board meetings remotely. Section 7, execution of this resolution is conclusive evidence of the board's approval of this action and of the authority granted herein. The board warrants that it has, and at the time of this action had, full power and lawful authority to adopt this instrument. The board intends that the board president has the authority to bind the board and the district and will sign this resolution after the board adopts it, but any signature line in this resolution not signed by the board president or board secretary may be deemed through email communications as intent to enter into this resolution with the same force and effect as an original executed signed document pursuant to the Illinois Electronic Commerce Security Act. May we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do you want us to edit that date?
No, as I continued reading, because I had forgotten how long this was, it takes care of itself.
Yep.
So
Okay.
it's not necessary. So no.
Second.
Hauptman,
Yes.
Lozada,
Yes.
Armenta, Hale,
Yes.
Candela,
Yes.
Kwan, yes, Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Moving on to the resolution to approve the procurement card. Be it resolved, the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education approves the recommendation to secure procurement cards for each authorized employee of the district under such terms and conditions as approved by the board. May I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Second.
Kwan, yes, Lozada,
Yes.
Armenta, Hale,
Yes.
Hauptman,
Yes.
Candela,
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to item D. Be it resolved, the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education approves the recommendation for Mr. Rogers' title change to Director of Finance and Operations / CSBO, Chief School Business Officer or Official, effective July 1st, 2020. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
Candela,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Armenta, Hale,
Yes.
Hauptman,
Yes.
Swan, yes. Lozada.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item E. Before we vote on the press policies, did anyone have any questions or want any discussion on this?
I just had one quick question. Are there any classes or are there any seminars that we need to take as board members based on what's in the press policy revisions?
You know, I didn't see any. I'm just going back through the press right now. And usually they send us through IASB, and I believe all of you are on that same list, as well as they send it to Daisy. If there are updates or webinars or workshops, we definitely forward them to you. So as they come up, I will.
Okay,
But
good.
I haven't seen any recently.
I haven't seen any, but I can definitely look into it to see if there's any if there are any workshops available.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to miss something. That's all.
Sure.
I'll follow up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions or any discussion? No? Okay, then we will vote on this. Whereas policy creation and updates and changes to adopted policies are provided for District 76 through the subscription to Policy Reference Educational Subscription Service, PRESS, from the Illinois Association of School Boards, IASB. And whereas the Policy Committee reviewed the policies and a first reading of the policies was held at the April 7th, 2020 Board Committee of the Whole meeting. Therefore be it resolved, the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education moves to approve the policy changes as presented and reviewed in IASB Press Issue 103. Policy 2:125, Board Member Compensation Expenses. Policy 2:125-E1, Board Member Expense Reimbursement Form. Policy 2:125-E2, Board Member Estimated Expense Approval Form. Policy 2:150-AP, Superintendent Committees. Policy 2:160, Board Attorney. Policy 2:160-E, Checklist for selecting a board attorney. Policy 4:50, Payment Procedures. Policy 4:60-AP4, Federal and State Award Procurement Procedures. Policy 4:170-AP6, E1, School Staff AED Notification Letter. Policy 5:35, Compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. Policy 5:35-AP1, Fair Labor Standards Act Exemptions. Policy 5:50, Drug and Alcohol-Free Workplace, E-cigarette, tobacco, and cannabis prohibition. Policy 5:60, Expenses. Policy 5:60-AP, Federal and State Grant Travel Expenses Procedures. Policy 5:60-E1, Employee Expense Reimbursement Form. Policy 5:60-E2, Employee Estimated Expense Approval Form. Policy 5:90-AP, Coordination with Children's Advocacy Center. Policy 5:120-AP1, Statement of Economic Interest for Employees. Policy 5:150, Personnel Records. Policy 5:210, Resignations. Policy 6:120-AP1, Special Education Procedures Assuring the Implementation of Comprehensive Programming for Children with Disabilities. Policy 6:135, Accelerated Placement Program. Policy 6:135-AP, Accelerated Placement Procurement or Program Procedures. Policy 6:235, Access to Electronic Networks. Policy 6:280, Grading and Promotion. Policy 7:70, Attendance and Truancy. Policy 7:90, Release during school hours. Policy 7:130, Student Rights and Responsibilities. Policy 7:190-E2, Student Handbook Checklist. Policy 7:325, Student Fundraising Activities. Policy 7:235-E, Application and Procedures to Involve Students in Fundraising Activities. Policy 8:10, Connection with the Community. Policy 8:30, Visitors to and Conduct on School Property. Policy 8:30-E1, Letter to Parent regarding visits to school by child sex offenders. Policy 8:30-E2, child sex offenders request for permission to visit school property. Policy 8:80, gifts to the district. Policy 8:110, public suggestions and concerns. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Lozada,
Yes.
Kwan, yes. Armenta, Hale,
Yes.
Houtman,
Yes.
Condella,
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to personnel. Be it resolved, the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education accepts and approves the personnel items as depicted on the agenda. We have one leave of absence. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. And I'll second.
Lozada,
Yes.
Houtman,
Yes.
Armenta, Hale,
Yes.
Condella,
Yes.
Kwan, yes. Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes our business agenda for the evening. Moving on to board discussion.
So we present one item tonight for board discussion, and we put it together, Dr. Fredericks, Mr. Rogers, and myself put it together more in a PowerPoint format, sharing with you that what we'd like to do at Diamond Lake School for next year is create a self-contained kindergarten through second grade classroom for students with social, emotional, and behavior issues. And if you look through the PowerPoint, we've kind of outlined our rationale for why we'd like to keep these students within our district. And normally what would happen is if there are some, they come into us in kindergarten, they may or may not have an IEP or any type of concerns brought out, but because this might be their first exposure to school or even pre-K. And so after spending some time with us, one of the things that Dr. Fredericks recommended is creating something like this so that we can keep our students within our district, within the building, with our own staff members, and kind of monitor it and then mainstream them out. That would be our goal. If we catch them young, intervene with them young, put their supports in place, then mainstream them out in first or second grade. And if we can't, doing so, we are going to partner with 2 other districts, with Mundelein District 75 as well as Hawthorne District 73, and how we want to grow this program. So right now it would just start out with us being K2, and then partner with them in the future to be a 3-5 at District 75, and then possibly a 6-8 at District 73 in Hawthorne. But starting out here, as you can see, we've outlined the rationale as to why we want to keep our students within the district. It would be less of a transition, not only for them, but also for their families. The benefits, which would be on slide 2, or excuse me, 3, you would see the cost savings of having just 3 students enrolled, of not outplacing them in CEDAL. So these would be students that either their behavior needs or their social emotional needs would be so high or extreme that we would have to outplace them. We're asking to keep them here. And that way they could get access to our curriculum, our staff members, and maintaining in our district. And then kind of our next step. So this is more of just a discussion topic, and then Dr. Fredericks and Mr. Rogers are here for questions as far as if you have for programming or who these children are or any of the cost saving measures. But we want to just kind of present to you what we're thinking about putting in place for next year. And we're losing a CEDAL classroom, so we have the availability at Diamond Lake or of physical space to do this. So Julianne or Eric, did you want to add anything?
You're muted,
I was just gonna
Julianne.
add that, from a cost perspective, this makes a lot of sense.
I can't hear Eric
brought
really.
this up. We took a look at the cost of several outplaced students, and it may cost $30,000 to $40,000 in tuition for one student. Not to mention, if we got to do a cab service, that's probably another $20,000 for the year. So just on a per student cost, 3 students more than breaks us even in the sense we're able to recoup some money, and any other students we add on top of that is going to be a significant financial saving.
Yeah, it's really just being proactive instead of reactive. This year particularly, we had an upsurge of students who were just really not kindergarten ready. And we did outplace a few of those students, but that's really not what we want to be doing. It's so hard on the families. They really want their kids to be with their peers, and they should want that. That's what's best for their kids. And we want to make sure though that we have the right environment. Our kids struggle then with being out at recess, being out in the lunchroom, attending specials, and we need to be able to have the ability to keep our kids in a more self-contained environment, and then with supports when they're ready, transition them with the goal of always getting them back into regular education. But sometimes our kids need some more direct instruction to be ready for that. So it's definitely a cost savings, but to me, it's really about making sure our kids have what they need to be successful in our district, because nobody can support our kids like we can.
So typically, how many students would this involve? Like what would be from year to year the average that we're outplacing that could benefit from this program?
Between kindergarten and second grade, right now I have 3 little ones outplaced, but I have 2 early childhood children that would be definitely outplaced moving up. And then we have about 3 more students in our kindergarten through second grade that we have been struggling to maintain appropriate placement for, but we would like to see some additional support. A benefit of having that support in the building is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We can pull a kid into a more structured environment in these areas that they need it, and then put them out back into the mainstream where they can tolerate that. The program would be less than 10 students or less is the maximum capacity based on the state regulations.
So there would be some fluidity to it in terms of how kids move in and out, and for how much of the day that they'd be involved. Is that what I'm
Absolutely. With a program in the building, we can tailor it to each individual child's needs. We're looking at staffing 1 teacher with 2 assistants, so that we have the flexibility of sending kids out to different mainstreamed opportunities with support. We also know that the other special education teachers would also play a part in this particular program. 1 teacher would be assigned to the program, but we want the kids to have continuous support. So our other classroom or our other special education staff will rotate into the classroom in order to provide the classroom teacher their appropriate lunch and planning time. So it's a very structured program that has basically a leveled system or explicitly teaching expectations and rewarding the students for meeting those expectations and providing feedback if they continue to struggle. But in this type of environment, we can keep the kids in a safe, secure, low student and high support staff ratio all day if we need to. And then if they, let's say they love math and they're successful in a general education environment for math, they can go out just for math and be in the self-contained room for the rest of the day. We have the ability to have that flexibility.
So this would be for Diamond Lake. What would happen to these students as they enter into the intermediate school?
That's a great question. That's something that we've been discussing internally. Our goal is to expand the program, just start with, getting the 1 program in place. Right now, we seem to have a surplus of students at the primary level, and then expand the program hopefully within the next year. And as Dr. Sharma Lewis mentioned, we have had discussions with other districts and partnering. So whether that means having the primary stay at Diamond Lake School and the intermediate go to another district, and then we would tuition base in or out we are considering all options. We just want to make sure as we begin a new program, we have the foundation in place before we expand it.
So if we were to partner with other districts and we were either accepting their students and or sending ours to another district's building, are we losing then some of the advantage of the ease for families of keeping the kids in the district and the socialization of those kids with their district peers rather than peers in a different district if they're going to another building?
To an extent, but those districts are very close to us in close proximity, and we already work closely with them. It also is always going to come down to numbers. If we have enough students within our district to have a program internally, we don't need to partner with other districts. But right now, when we're sending ourselves to seed all programs, we have several kids going to Milburn, which is very far outside of the district, and loses the ability to even transition back for partial day to District 76. I have a kindergartner that's being bused to Arlington Heights every day. And so some of these programs are so far away from us that it's definitely cuts off any opportunity for kids to even have just normal play dates. But if they're in District 75, sometimes those kids are in such close proximity that they're still in the same neighborhood. So
I think it's a great idea, and I think the more kids that we can service in our district, the better. I mean, the closer they are to home, the closer they are to their neighbors and their friends, I think the better the socialization part is for them, the more comfort they're going to have, the more successful that they're going to be. So I'm all for keeping as many kids as we can, as long as we're able to provide for them, provide for their needs, keep as many as we can in the district.
we agree. Thank you.
So if I understand you right, you are targeting this for the fall of 2020, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what is that target number, the estimated target number that you would say you would keep the students in our district? Is it 9? Is it 10?
It's always going to be less than 10 or less. I don't think we would necessarily outplace all of those students, but our goal is always independence for our students. So sometimes if a child's having extreme behavior, they may end up with an assistant, but an assistant isn't always the right answer, because that person is actually doing more for the students. It's much more restrictive than just teaching them the skills that they need. In terms of next year, I would anticipate starting the year with 6 students that would have been outplaced. So, if Eric is saying it's a cost savings of $60,000 based on 3 and doubling that, that's significant. I mean, we definitely pay premium dollar to send kids to various programs when we know we can do a better job with our own kids. And it's certainly easier on the family. I mean, to watch a mom of a kindergarten kid who's just devastated because we're saying, you know what, we can't really meet your kid's needs, but we have this other program, it's going to be great, but it's, all the way in Milburn. It's not the same. So I'm excited about the possibility of bringing some of our students back.
Sure. Let me also ask you about the teachers and the assistants. Do we have, I'm sure we have the right people. Do they have the right training?
Well, yeah, we would like to continue the professional development. That's something we certainly want to make sure that the staff is very well trained. We are spending a lot of additional time training our learning associates to work with students who have more significant behavioral needs, and that's something that's ongoing with our teaching staff.
Okay. Yeah. Is any of the cost of that built into your proposal, so that we can that way we can account for any additional supplementary training that they may need?
I don't think, Eric, we didn't really take a look at that per se. That's something we're doing ongoing with the special education department. Eric, do you have any comments on that?
No, you're right. That was just tuition and transportation. built into that. So if, you know, we'd allocate a little bit of that cost saving towards PD.
Each year when we write the special education grant, we're required to allocate a minimum of $7,000 for professional development for special education staff. And so some of those funds, as we get ready to write the grant, we would just write that into that specific need.
And I think right now, just to answer your question about the additional cost, I think right now it would just be for one additional staff member for the special education teacher, the actual resource teacher. But I believe we have the learning associates on staff right now that we would just reallocate.
Correct.
Okay. And you touched on it, so whether maybe at some point we should have a broader conversation about our future with CEDAW, and because this really creates a very interesting mapping for our students, and I'm always a proponent of making sure that our students are well taken care of, and like you said already, we feel like we do the best job of that.
We do.
At some point we'd like to have that conversation.
When we look at some of the students we place into our CEDAW programs, we have the majority of our students are basically one specific need at one specific grade level, and we would not be able to create that same type of classroom. For example, we currently have an 8th grade student who's functioning around the 18-month level. So she requires specific everything. She has specific curriculum, she has specific materials and resources, and she is far different than the rest of our students. We would not be able to group her with any other students. We have a 6th grade student who has both a hearing impairment and he's in a wheelchair. So he's a student that I don't have the same, I can't create a classroom with one student who has a physical disability and a hearing impairment. He needs such specialized instruction. So for right now, we do have a need to continue our relationship for some of our specific students. But anytime we see a little bit of a bubble, so for example, we saw a bubble with the primary level of our kids with emotional needs. If we have enough students, 3 is typically 3 or more students that have similar needs that wouldn't fit into a classroom, then it makes sense to consider that type of classroom and bringing it home.
Okay, thanks for that.
Are there any other questions? Okay, and those, that's all we have for discussion for tonight.
I think we have a question. Do you guys see a question and answer at the bottom?
Yeah, actually, from one of our teachers, it wasn't a question. It was just, I think it's a great way to save money and assist our students. Having the ability to meet these students' needs is very important. How can we help? And that was from one of our teachers.
Well, I mean, I love the fact that that's, you know, the attitude. That's the best way to help, to me, is to make sure that all of our staff members are just student-centered and care about, you know, our students from primary, because that's a middle school teacher all the way through.
I don't see any other questions. Are there any for the members? Okay.
Okay. I think that's the only thing we have for board discussion, unless I was going to ask you, not to put everyone on the spot, but if anyone wanted to give kind of a general update on the distance learning objectives and how that's going, or, you know, how you think that the staff and the teachers are adjusting as this continues, and the same with the students.
You know, I think everybody received Monday kind of the updates of the expectations as far as attendance and participation, increased engagement and instruction from teachers. I know it's working really well, pre-K through 5, as far as teachers interacting daily with students, whether it's through a class meeting, or it's whether through direct instruction, or whether through its small group meeting. And I know Mr. Preble does his daily announcements and kind of does his, you know, morning announcements through through that virtual means too. And I know Dr. Fredericks is taking that on. I know Mr. Cunningham mentioned a few things that he's doing as far as jumping into classrooms and doing some large group things socially during the lunch hour. So I know we're definitely modifying based on feedback that we've heard from parents and from board members of just more things we can do to engage and connect with students. So I think we're definitely taking that feedback into consideration. I'd like the principals and or Dr. Drucker or Mr. Hansen, anyone to comment on maybe what you're seeing and doing, and then how we plan to continue, grow, and strengthen it as we go into phase 4 starting May 4th.
Sure. I certainly can jump in. I am so blown away by my staff's capacity to continue to reach out to students and to find ways to support families, whether that's providing additional instructional opportunities and engagement, or by just helping families to determine what's essential and what's okay to let go, because we've had the extreme in terms of we need more and oh my gosh, please don't make me. At this point, we have our resource teachers providing individualized group instruction. So students they've been working with and providing interventions with, they are now tapping into and supporting directly. All of our classrooms have a morning meeting. We have focused on math and literacy during the day, and then we have other enrichment opportunities. Our specialists are also providing direct instruction, so all of our kids have a schedule with what time they can go to access music or access other things, so we're really excited. I'm meeting with our learning associates tomorrow, as well as our office staff to create a kind of a social hour so that the kids have a supervised but just fun, bring a joke and share an opportunity with your peer opportunity that we hope to roll out next week. We've had pretty good attendance. The teachers get more and more excited when they connect with kids that hadn't been tuned in. And then just in the last couple of days, I have been a little bit more persistent in families that we have not heard a word from. I have worked with the Lake County and Mundelein police departments to do child safety checks, and I'm been blown away by their response. They've handled it right away, and Mr. Hansen is immediately setting up opportunities for those families to pick up their Chromebooks. So that's been really nice. So I think we're in a very good place at this point.
Yeah, at the intermediate side, much the same. We have a schedule put together where our homeroom teachers are meeting with their students each and every day, and then we rotate our specials throughout the grade levels on an ABC schedule. So every 3 days, a grade level will interact with a particular special, and then our interventionists also have a schedule throughout the day where they interact with their students as well. So it's been going pretty good. Attendance isn't quite, where we'd want 100% attendance. In speaking with teams today and yesterday, we're still hovering around anywhere from, on a given day, 30 to about 80%. And it fluctuates. Friday was pretty light, but the past couple of days we've seen an uptick. We'll also be putting together a social opportunity that we're going to roll out next week. But I also have some of my specials teachers and some of my homeroom teachers are looking at doing a lunch with students that the middle school has already started doing. So we're gonna capitalize on that. But I think the biggest thing that we found with the more consistent opportunities to interact with students is, like Dr. Frederick said, finding out what those families actually need, whether it's connecting, whether it's food, whether it's essential, home items. It's straight from the mouths of babes. We don't always get the parents that will tell us these things, but the students definitely will. So that helps us react and figure out ways to come up with solutions for these things. So it was a good week last week. It started off a little hectic because we did change some things, but by the end of the week it was the stories that my staff was sharing with me about what they're learning about how to help these families, and whether they're third party, translating for the guy on Comcast to try to help them get hooked up. It's been awesome, and the teachers are doing this. And our tech department's been great with their support. So it's been last week was a really good week.
So when you're saying student attendance, how are you defining attendance? Is it whether they come to the Google Meet, or is it whether they participated in some way, turned in an assignment, or?
Yeah, all the above. So we have a couple different mechanisms for figuring out how often our students are on there. One is we have a login for our students to actually click in their distance learning plan so that they can sign in and sit, that they were there. We've had some inconsistencies with that because we know that we've had students online with our teachers, but then they don't log in. So, we try to remind them to do that, things like that. Teachers are making notes of who they're seeing each day. And Dr. Fredericks hit it on the head when she said the teachers get super excited when finally we get somebody to connect that maybe we haven't been connecting with. That's always a real positive experience. And then just jumping in into some of these class meetings, try to rotate through them as much as possible each and every day. It's not an overwhelming amount of kids, but some of the kids are bouncing in and out. I'll jump in a class meeting and see anywhere from 7 to 16 kids, depending on what time of the morning it is. So as long as we're providing those opportunities, it's the way we're going to capture as many as possible. And then we just keep encouraging them to, we'll send messages to them, just say, hey, make sure you join us. And I encourage students to let their friends know if they haven't seen them on the class meeting, send them an email, send them a text, call them, whatever. I don't have a lot of third graders sending text messages, but they have ways to talk to their friends that we might not, and just to encourage them to say, hey, Miss Amadio is going to be on at 8:30 tomorrow, or Miss Finland's going to be on at 10:30 tomorrow. Let's make sure you come on. So that's what we're trying to do at the intermediate level.
Well, at the middle school level, I have been posting daily announcements on the Student Hub, and I don't know, I'm not getting a lot of rave reviews from students, as cool as I am. They're there. We're trying to honor birthdays, a number of things that we've always done. And we've got a book club going right now. A number of teachers are hosting. As Kurt mentioned earlier, some of our teachers have initiated a lunch group. We're finding that a lot of those half hour, we really have teachers break down by subject a half hour they're available for students. They're available all morning. They're interacting all through the afternoon as well. But just that half hour strategic time, a lot of students are dropping in and they just want to connect with teachers and with each other. And so we want to continue to offer an avenue for that where kids are social and we want to meet some of those needs. So the other grade levels have discussed it and want to expand that. So we're kind of can do that at all grade levels, but it's been great. I've really enjoyed being a part of that. We have, we're the way that attendance for us, the way that we're traditionally doing it, we haven't seen as many students use it. Just to Mr. Condell, to go back to what you were asking, what we're using is probably more valuable is we're tracking every single kid and what they've done in every single subject. So I have a spreadsheet for every grade that Mr. Williford and I can look at, and we can see every single student, what they've done for every subject each week, every piece of contact that teachers have, and they've done such an incredible job tracking down students, meeting resource needs, just like the other schools, interacting with parents, problem solving, how to get students interacting online. We're finding a lot of our students don't jump on to do the work until a lot of them don't seem to be waking up until around noon or after. But we're finding a lot of our work is getting turned in around 10:15, 11 o'clock at night. And so staff are available, but we're finding students are very nocturnal. That's been an interesting trend as we've talked about how to navigate that. And we're learning that, students are not used to distance learning and how they navigate 8 subjects for distance learning. That can be overwhelming. So we discuss as a building, we discuss as a leadership team, how do we support students to be able to complete work and stay engaged in all of their subject areas in a way that is sustainable. So that's been really kind of what we're looking at right now as we move into the next phase, is how we help kids navigate each of their 8 subjects evenly.
I also think, Peter, to add to that, as we talked about it at BLT, the teachers have to adjust their instruction, and it's hard because it's all being done virtually. And so in the classroom, you can get a sense, you can take a pulse, you can use formative assessments, you can use a variety of different ways, and you can adjust the pace of a lesson, or I need to reteach, or I need to elaborate. Because so much is done within 30-minute windows, etc., the teachers are learning more about how to adjust their pace of instruction. The other thing is the students, some of the feedback we were getting, and I'm looking at my notes, some of the feedback is they were feeling they had to attend every single one of those meet your teacher windows, and then that interferes with their class, their time to do the work, and they're feeling overwhelmed, and they actually need like a catch-up day. And so we're going to kind of look at the schedule to make sure that our students don't have this undue pressure to try to get 8 subjects every day, but we're going to try to work in some, I don't know if you want to call it study hall or make up work time or something, but we have to look at our schedule a little bit because the students are a little overwhelmed. That's some of the feedback we got. And I also would like to throw out, all the teachers at all the schools. I'm impressed with those at my son and other schools and everything, but we had a group of special ed teachers get permission, and they knocked on doors and stood back and tried to connect with kids because they were concerned about them. And that's special at this time. That is remarkable caretakers. And so I think it's important that we recognize how hard all the teachers in all the schools and grade levels are really, they're trying so hard to do everything. They're emailing parents every day. And for those kids who aren't doing the work and they're trying to reach out, I get a ton of emails and we've sent letters to parents and emails. I think Ms. Hale and Ms. Kwan, you saw the last Friday school messenger. We wanted to help remind parents about certain expectations and try to encourage children to be on. And so I think it's a good learning curve for everyone, but they're working hard.
Mr. Hanson, did you want to comment at all about technology? I know there was a
Yeah,
question
I'd be happy.
about just connectivity and how many families have picked up the devices and have access
Absolutely.
to Wi-Fi.
And the principals did a great job of kind of giving you a great story about like how distance learning opportunities are going. Regarding technology, we've had a lot more families pick up devices from the K-2. There's still a few families that still need to pick up their devices, but we've reached out. Actually, we've communicated from schools as well as teachers, whether through Class Dojo, email, or so on and so forth, to make sure that they they have a better connection with the families to be able to pick up devices, which has been successful. Regarding student access, or I'm sorry, parent access to internet, prior to us remotely doing our board meeting, I think a few board meetings ago, I said we were at 5% of families that said that they don't have internet. I'm happy to say right now, based off of that information, we're less than 1%. Based off of, and the exact number is around 3 or 4 that have said that they do not. And I have some numbers of families that still need to reply, but significantly is decreased based off the opportunities that's available during this time, which is great. That being said, we still want to make sure all of our families are connected. So we've reached out to service providers, and we've narrowed down to a service provider to obtain hotspots. And once they are processed and delivered, we'll be reaching out to the families whom share that they do not have internet or have struggling to obtain, and making sure that they're connected.
And I just want to give a shout out to our PTO who shared with Mr. Rogers earlier that they will be providing all the funds for the hotspots for the families who don't need them. So as soon as we purchase them, and then we'll distribute them. But that's due to the generous donation of our PTO.
Yeah, and if I could chime in, I'd just like to add that, you know, as the DLT and as the principals have shared, we're moving towards another iteration to kind of look at phase 4 of our DLOs and then try and touch upon some of those things related to participation and engagement. Obviously, we're navigating some pretty new waters here, but I think the district leadership team, as much as we're focusing on, you know, what we'll be doing for the next 6 weeks, we're also looking towards the future and how we're going to, and I know Mr. Preble could probably talk a little bit about this, but how summer school is going to address the gaps, but then also recognizing that we've lost a third of our year. And as has been mentioned, you know, between approximately 30% of our kids are engaging and participating. Even with those levels, you have to question what is the true nature of that engagement and what is the, I guess, profitability of that time that students are engaging with distance learning opportunities. So as we move forward, you know, through the end of this school year and through the summer, both the district leadership team, the instructional leadership team, and the grade level content areas are really going to be focused on how we are going to sort of walk backwards to be able to address the previous year's gaps so that we can try and make up some of those areas we were unfortunately not able to cover.
And if I can just comment too, I think, and Mr. Lozada asked the question when we were talking about the additional classroom at Diamond Lake, you know, what are we doing for professional development? And I think that, you know, the curriculum meetings are still continuing to happen. I know Dr. Drock is meeting with the instructional leadership team as well as the dual language leadership team. And, you know, each of the principals are meeting with their grade level teams and their content area teams. So these professional dialogues are still happening in the professional learning team standpoint with principals as well as with the district departments. And I know Mr. Hansen is working with the library media specialist to make sure that teachers are supported with, you know, the new technology, what new conferencing formats, whatever, you know, websites around there or links, or just staying on top of and current of best practices. Even though we've had to kind of have a paradigm shift of how we're presenting the information, it's still business as usual and making sure that we keep up the rigor and relevance of our professional development meetings and trainings.
Can I add to there, Dr. Sharma Lewis? We're also continuing our relationship with both the Stevenson Consortium, working closely with those teams. I met with all of the feeder schools into Stevenson last week, and Thursday I'm meeting with the feeder schools that move towards Mundelein High School, and the thing that I had mentioned earlier about addressing those gaps in terms of curriculum have been the forefront of our conversations. So we're sort of all in this wonderful boat together in hopes to come up with some additional resources and time to kind of address those issues. So I wanted to just piggyback off what you were saying there, Dr. Sharma Lewis, that not only are we doing it internally, but we're also doing it into our feeder districts as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. You know, and just to your question, Joy, because you had asked for an update, we were planning on doing, you know, kind of like a monthly update, you know, at the next board meeting. I know that at the committee meeting, just kind of presenting that to you. So we'll provide we can do it going forward of just providing more, even visuals like we did last time. It's just so you can actually see pictures of what kids are doing and what teachers are doing in some of our products.
Sure, that would be great. I just asked for the updates tonight mainly because with hearing the governor's, you know, closure of the since our last meeting, he's closed the schools through the end of the year, and I know we've moved into another phase. And I know just that announcement, I think, kind of shifted the mindset for a lot of kids and parents, and so I just kind of wanted to get you know, a touch point as to how people were feeling and how people were doing. You know, I feel confident that I can speak really on behalf of the board to say that, you know, we're really appreciative of all the work that you guys are putting into everything from, you know, all of our teachers, all of the staff, you know, the people that are helping to hand out the lunches, all of you, you know, it's constantly, everything is constantly changing. You have to adapt to all these different situations. Parents are having to adapt as well. And I think everyone really appreciates all the time and effort you're spending, and the fact that you're so willing to constantly revisit and adapt your practices to really meet the best needs of the kids. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate our appreciation for all of your work and all the work of the staff. And you know, I think the board is really impressed with how hard everyone is working on constantly, you know, adapting your plan and working to really meet the needs of all these kids, you know, on every level, from making sure they have technology, making sure they can connect to the internet, making sure they're getting the right resources, making sure we're trying to meet their social and emotional needs. I think it's, you know, obviously a huge challenge for everybody. And I think that we're really impressed at how hard everyone is working. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will move on to FOIA requests, of which we have none. Notices and communications, we just have, as usual, kind of our updated board calendar. Nothing has changed for that. We now move on to public comments and petitions on non-agenda items. Do we have any comments or questions?
Please go ahead and you could add a question if you want to. If you're on a computer and there's one person on the phone, if you're on your phone, you can do *9 or I think 9, and they'll raise your hand and we could allow public comment. If not,
okay. Sorry, that's my dog. He's not enjoying this.
Chewy has a public comment.
Yeah.
Translate.
He's voicing his concern. Okay.
there isn't.
We're going to assume there's no public comments. The last thing we have is others. I see on the board packet today, the mayor of Mundelein issued an order for face coverings when people are outside, and that goes into effect on the 23rd. So that's part of the board packet. I'm sure all of you, may have heard about it. It seems like most of the surrounding suburbs are implementing these requirements as you go out to make sure your face is covered. Okay, and if there are no more questions, then can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Lozada,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Armenta, Hale,
Yes.
Hauptman,
Yes.
Kandala,
Yes.
Kwan, yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Stay
you.
well.
You, yes, you
Thank
too.
you. Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody have a great night.